Hey folks, it's Philip with the Everyday Fighter podcast, and I wanted to welcome you to this episode. Today we're going to be talking with Larry Hagner. Not only is he the founder of the Good Dad Project and the Dad Edge podcast and alliance, which, full disclosure, I am a part of, but he is also an accomplished martial artist. So I enjoyed this time talking with him about that aspect of his life, but also he gets really raw, talking about growing up overweight, having some pretty hard challenges with bullies through most of his youth, but then also some great stories about not only turning that around, but also channeling that newfound confidence and strength into other areas of his life, particularly martial arts. Of course, on the flip side of that, he shares also, he didn't really hold back on this chat, on how discovering that part of himself and focusing on that actually caused an imbalance in his life where it got to be fairly challenging. So it was a great interview. I'm looking forward to sharing it with you. But of course, before we do that, I wanted to get into our episode Spotlight. And just a reminder, these are people, individuals, or organizations that I like to kind of put a spotlight on, kind of share what they're doing, just because I think that they're doing some good stuff in the world. And I think we need a little bit more of that. At least I'm compelled to kind of share them with you. These folks, for the most part, they do not know that I am doing this. They probably don't even know who I am. But again, just my way of sharing some of the good work that they're doing. And today, I wanted to talk about a place that I go to pretty often just to kind of lift my spirits. And that is the page of Steve Hartman. And if you haven't heard of him, he's actually a correspondent for the CBS Evening News. He does a segment called On the Road. So you'll see that, if you watch the CBS Evening News, you'll probably see him there. But I don't watch TV at home. I usually get all my stuff on the internet, quite frankly. But this is one of those places that I love going to, and he just goes all around the country talking about and highlighting people that are just doing good things. For the most part, they're kind of everyday people, they're doing things for complete strangers, doing things for their neighbors, doing things for the community just out of the kindness of their hearts. One of my favorite segments of his, he does this annually, is he follows around this Secret Santa. And this is a gentleman that's fairly wealthy, but this guy just goes around the country around Christmas time, and he hands out money. He goes to thrift shops. He goes, and he just hands out $100 bills to people. And he does it completely anonymously. These people don't know who he is. When he's on camera, when Steve follows him, he's blurred out. So I'd heard about him through Steve Hartman, and it's just kind of a feel good place that I just love going to. So if you want to learn more about him, just go to the CBS Evening News with Jeff Glor. Look for On the Road. I'll also link to Steve's Facebook page, so you can go to him directly there as well. I don't know if he has an actual website himself, but I know I just go to his Facebook page. In any case, that is our spotlight. It's Steve Hartman from CBS Evening News On the Road. And with that, let's jump into our interview with Larry Hagner.
I was always intrigued by martial arts growing up. Reason being is because I was bullied a lot. I was pushed around a ton. And that's because I was overweight. I was an overweight kid. I was raised by a single mother, so I didn't really have anybody who taught me, and they didn't have YouTube back then where I could go on YouTube and maybe learn some moves or do something. Like literally, if I went to learn, it was either a karate dojo or it was a book, with pictures and stuff like that. But there were several times that I was beaten down, beat up, picked on, bullied. I used to hate going out to recess because, especially in junior high, because like I would constantly, like we'd be playing basketball and I sucked at basketball. So everybody would make fun of me. So I'd kind of like stand over by the side, and I didn't know which one was worse, standing over by the side and then having the ball chucked at me, just countless times, or trying to play basketball and then everybody laughing at you because you can't play. So there was that. And to be honest, like I remember my freshman and sophomore year of high school, I got bullied a lot. And I don't know, years and years of it. I mean, we're talking like from fourth grade to sophomore year of high school, I was bullied, and I was that kid. And like I said, I was targeted because like I just took it. I just took it. I never fought back. And then I'll never forget. Actually, it goes back even sooner than that. When I was in eighth grade one time, I had this, sixth grade. I had this eighth grader that was constantly bullying me, constantly giving me crap. And he'd come out at recess and always mess with me. And one day, this was going on and on for like weeks. And then he pushed me down one day. I don't know what it was, but like I remember like getting up and saying to myself, "That's it." Like those two words, "That's it." Like, and I snapped, and I just hauled off and punched him twice in the face. And everyone was like shocked because for, 2 years, like they just saw me kind of get pushed around and never fight back. And I fought back. And then finally, I think I was about a sophomore year in high school. I spent a lot of time, junior year especially, in detention. I went to an all boys Catholic prep high school. I didn't really fit in. Me and about probably 10 other kids in my class didn't really fit in. It was a class of 190 boys. And me and about 10 other guys didn't really fit in because we were poor. We didn't have a lot of money, and this school was very expensive to go to. Luckily, I got to go on a work grant. But I used to be called, white trash and ghetto, and, I didn't have the name brand stuff, and I was overweight and all this stuff. And I just remember my junior year, I dropped a bunch of weight, and I just got pissed. I got pissed when people started to mess with me. And then when people started to mess with me, I fought back. And I spent more time in detention fighting back, but I didn't regret any of it. And I was like, but I didn't know what to do. I wrestled in high school, and that definitely helped me a lot. But I didn't get into martial arts until I was in college. And then I had a good friend of mine who was a second-degree black belt in Taekwondo. And I told him, I was like, I've always wanted to do this ever since I was little. I just want to be able to defend myself, And so we worked out a deal where I paid him I think it was a steal. It was like $15 a month, but it was, and I got like three classes a week, and it turned out, what turned out to be me and him turned out to be, our college, Taekwondo club. So we had, he started it pretty much. I was his first student. And then by the time I graduated, we had 30 people in the club that were taking it. It was highly organized and everything. And it was great. But that's when I got my first taste of martial arts was in college.
Okay. Like the formal kind of.
Yeah.
Going in there. Well, I mean, dude, having experienced kind of this bullying since like, fourth grade instead, I mean, were you thinking about martial arts back then at all?
I was, because I had a really good friend of mine. He was a good guy. He always stuck up for me. He took Taekwondo, or I think it was karate. He took karate. Yeah. And I just remember like we were in fourth, fifth grade. And I just remember like one summer him coming back, and he's like a kid, right? And he came back just ripped. I mean, like we were just like, what? Like almost looked like that one documentary of the kid who's like the strongest kid in the world, who's like just jacked. Like that's kind of what he looked like. I was like, what have you been doing? He's like, I've been taking karate class. I do it 3 times a week and 4 times a week. And so he practiced like relentlessly. So I always thought it was really cool. Like that was kind of my first sort of taste of it. I was like, man, I would love to do that. We couldn't afford it though. Like my mom could not afford it. So we didn't do it. Yeah.
Yeah. But then you started getting bullied. Was it, I can imagine, man. Like, I mean, I definitely had my share of that, but like, was it such that you started thinking of it more and more as kind of, because I remember as a kid, my first taste of it and like my obsession with it was more of like, watched a lot of movies, right? I'm like, oh, that would be a cool thing to learn to do. But it didn't really have it such that I think of it as a way to like, I need to protect myself, right? I need a way to stand up to these people. I mean, was that what you had in your head like most of the time afterwards after learning about your friend? Like,
It's funny you say that because, like I said, back then there was no internet. There was nothing. There were no resources out there like that. I remember watching Chuck Norris movies over and over again and trying to figure out, like, okay, that's how he kicks, that's how he punches. My favorite movie when he was like Delta Force and Lone Wolf McQuade.
yeah.
Like, I loved those movies. And then Kickboxer came out,
Oh.
with Van Damme, and I was like, oh, just learning like, oh, could I replicate that? Could I do that? Karate Kid, like that kind of thing. Like, maybe if I just practice these couple of moves that are in these movies, like maybe then I could maybe protect myself. But yeah, that was I guess that was kind of our YouTube back then.
Mm-hmm. Now, I want to talk about like when you fought back. Well, I mean, the guy was bullying and you punched him. I think you said a couple times in the face. Got detention for it or such.
I did.
What was that like, man?
I was so scared. I didn't know what I was doing. I never hit anybody, and definitely didn't hit him in the face. Like I remember I remember this like it was yesterday. I remember the kids that were standing around. I remember what it felt like to be pushed down to the pavement, like my hands actually hitting the pavement. And then like, I remember I knew I was going to fight back. And I was like, how does my hand even connect to his face? Like, how do I even, you
made the decision already before you even like, okay.
I did, because I remember hitting the ground. I was like, and I remember like, that's it. And I just remember like my adrenaline was going. I knew I was going to fight back. And I remember hitting him, and I didn't even feel it on my hands. I didn't even know if I did hit him. Like, that's how bad my adrenaline was going. And all of a sudden he walked away holding his nose, and he had a bloody nose. And I was like, did I just, I felt like I came out of my body. Like, it was like this, because I didn't feel anything. Like, I just, my adrenaline was going so hardcore. And I just remember like all the kids around me, even though like I was the fat kid that no one liked, like they were cheering. And I was like, oh my God, did that just happen? And then he left me alone. They were cheering. And then they left me alone. I guess at the end of the day, I mean, maybe I just surprised them with something, because it was day in, day out, just get pushed around.
Now, when you say they left you alone, so the bullying at that point stopped at that?
No.
Afterwards?
Oh God, no. They left me alone for like a week. Then, yeah. And then, the worst part about it was when I was in 8th grade, like, and I'll share this with you too. I was so defeated as a kid, zero self-esteem. I was fat. I was really overweight. I mean, I had man boobs. I hated going to the swimming pool because everybody would make fun of my boobs. And like literally, and like when I would, Stand By Me was a very popular movie back then. And so when I'd walk by, people would go boom, baba, boom, baba, boom. Like, when I'd walk, and, I hated it. I mean, even talking about it now, like there's still like, there's that fat kid in me that it's hard for me to talk about it sometimes, because it was relentless for years. And like I said, I remember just going home from school. I remember crying. I remember I'll never forget this one time, this one summer. I was 12, and this is before like the I guess the under the age employment. It was like I was working for Domino's as a 12-year-old. Me and one of my friends wanted to make some extra money, so we were working at Domino's. And what we did is we hung the coupons on the door, like we were door hangers. So Domino's would pay us cash. Like this one Domino's would pay us cash. The manager would actually in the morning come by and pick up all the kids, and then we'd go do this. And I remember being and he had a van and everything. And I remember this one kid. Oh man, I remember like it was yesterday. I was 12, and he was sitting in front of me in the van. I was in the back. And he's like, why are you so fat, man? Why are you so fat? You fat. You fat. Hey, man, you fat. Like just over and over and over. And I was just like, and I just sat there. I couldn't do anything or say anything. I was like, shut up. He's like, I shut up, but you still fat. You all fat. Like over and over. And I'm like, and I remember coming home, and they would do things too. Like they would get on my route where I was hanging the doors, and they would surround me and like push me around, mess with me and that kind of thing. And I remember going home one day, and I remember walking in the front door after, and my mom was like, "Oh, how was your day?" And I remember going into the bathroom and crying, like freaking losing it, because I had held back crying the whole day. Like, 'cause I couldn't let them see me cry. But there were times where they would be in my face so bad that I was like holding in, like just breaking down. And I'll never forget, like my mom, I guess I was in there for a while. My mom knocked on the door and she was like, "Are you okay? Are you okay in there?" And I remember like, I was like, I'm trying to like make sure my voice didn't sound like I was crying. And of course, she knew. She's like, what's wrong? And I remember just like losing it. Like, they won't leave me alone. Like every day, like I get made fun of. I don't want to go back to work. Like, I don't want to go there. Like, I just, every day it was awful. And, yeah, I mean, I there was always that part of me. I was like, God, man, I wish I had a dad that would teach me how to punch. I wish I had a dad that would teach me how to kick. Where there was even that part of me that were like, I wish my mom wouldn't coddle me. I wish there was a small side of me that just was like, I wish I had a man in my life that was just like, go kick their ass. You have my permission to go kick their ass. And I didn't have that, because I thought like, well, what if I really hurt somebody? Like, well, then I'll be in bigger trouble, So I was always terrified to do stuff like that.
So was that the message that that was my next question is like, your mom is there. I mean, obviously she's seeing at least this incident, and, the after effects of it, but this has been going on for a while. You didn't feel like you had permission from her to do anything about it? Or like, what was her reaction to all of this?
Her reaction was, I mean, she was, she did the best she could.
Sure.
I think my mom was growing up. She was like a popular kid, she was really pretty, and, she didn't have a problem getting friends, and she was popular and all that. So like, to see me go through that, I think it broke her heart. I know there were some times that she'd break down with me because she felt so bad about it. But I just remember she would always say, just ignore him, just walk away, just ignore him. And that never worked. I couldn't ignore them because they were always all up in my space, and I couldn't walk away. They just follow me. So that advice did not help, and yeah, it wasn't until later that I finally, and I still didn't know how to fight. I just got to the point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to erupt, and I did a few times.
And even like in when this happened in school, I mean, you were the one that was getting bullied. You defended yourself, yet you're the one that got detention.
Always the people I was fighting got detention too.
Okay.
So the way, when I was in high school, they looked at it as twofold. It was like, no fault, you're both in trouble. So
the fact that it happened at all,
yeah,
you could have just stopped it. You could have just not done anything.
I could have, but I couldn't take it anymore. I was just up to that point where, I had so much rage in me for being bullied that long. And then when I noticed, like when I started working out in junior year, when I got stronger, I was like, I can actually defend myself a little, even though I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I can actually like get someone the hell off me, or I can hit somebody in the face and I know they're going to fall, or I can tackle somebody. And wrestling was great because like someone tried to, take you down, you could throw them into a wrestling move. It was great. But yeah, having like now, here's the way I coach my kids. So here we are, I did 2 years of Taekwondo. I did 7 years of Kuksulwan. I'm about ready. My oldest son wants to start. He wants to learn how to defend himself. He's like, will you teach me? And I could teach him, but I'm like, let's go learn together. Like, I want to get back into it. Like, let's do something together. So we're going to go try Krav Maga. And so we're actually, I think, going to go this week. But my message to them is like, and I've always said this, I have no problem with you ever physically defending yourself, ever. Someone gets in your space and tries to hurt you, hurt them before they hurt you. Like, that's my message to them. It is okay to defend yourself. It's okay, especially if someone, I mean, because as you get older, if someone does something to you, if you don't try to defend yourself, then what? You could be in some serious, you get hurt worse, So I always I always use the analogy of what I heard in American Sniper is there are sheep, there are wolves, and there are sheepdogs. And my message to them is you are never a wolf. You never pick on someone who is who is weaker than you. You never instigate a fight. You were always either defending yourself or defending someone you care about. And I didn't know if that message was actually sinking in. You know, I've taught my kids some things, but my oldest son is 12. He's little for his age, very skinny and little for his age, and he's very empathetic. You know, wouldn't hurt a fly.
Yeah.
And there was one day this kid. He's, you know, my 12-year-old's 70 pounds, and there's a 12-year-old that was picking on my 10-year-old, and he was 110 pounds, and my 10-year-old weighs the same as my 12-year-old. And the funny thing is my 10-year-old, he's like a second in state wrestler. You know, he plays football. I mean, he's super strong, super athletic. And one time this kid went to pick a fight with him, and out of nowhere, my 12-year-old just like unleashed fury on this kid and tackled him. This kid had 40 pounds on him, and he tackled him, and he was protecting his brother. And I was like, it was almost that part in Cinderella Man, because I was in my garage and I was cleaning it out, and my adrenaline started going, because I was like, what is going on over there? And I went over there, and this kid's dad came running out too, because he got in my son's face, and I was just like, no. You know, I saw what happened. You know, your son was about ready to hit my 10-year-old. But literally, like, my son was like, am I in trouble? I was like, oh no. Yeah. You are not in trouble. That was the best thing you could have done. Like, I felt like that part in Cinderella Man where it was after he won that comeback fight, and then Paul Giamatti was like, Jesus H. Christ and all the saints, and where did that come from? Like, that part. And I was just like, I was so proud of him. I was like, dude, where did that come from? And he was like shaking. He was like, you're not mad at me? I was like, no, I'm not mad at you. I was like, you just protected your brother. I was like, you took that bigger kid to the ground. I was like, that is the best thing you could. Now, if you would have done that, had he not come after your brother, you'd be in trouble. Yes. But you were doing that out of defending yourself and someone you love. So no, you're not in trouble at all. You should have done that all over again. Exactly. No different. But that was my message to him.
That's so interesting. And God, there's so many places I want to go with this, but it's so interesting that the first thing out of his mouth when you came up to him was that he wasn't in trouble from you.
Yeah, no.
You know, it wasn't even about like, oh my gosh, this thing just happened, this injustice or whatnot. But it was, he was worried about your impression of him in this situation.
Very much so. Very much so. Which I you know, that just shows again his empathetic side. Like, oh my gosh, did I make you mad? You know? It's like, no, not at all. You did something very, very good.
But in terms of like your relationship with him.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that coming from some people, they could think, oh, well, you know, he might be scared of how you react. But I think for me, it sounds like more of like just, there's a reverence of you and your opinion of what happened.
Yeah.
You know, and he didn't want to risk that.
Yeah.
No. So, did you take sports growing up?
I did, but I was awful. Like I played baseball. I was terrible. I played basketball. I was even worse at that. Like, we're talking like junior high.
Yeah.
Anything with a ball, like, I'm just not good at. Like I just the depth perception and all that. Like, I'm just not. I have two left feet when it comes to that kind of stuff. Yeah. But one-on-one sports, like fighting or working out or, you know, like fitness. Like, I mean, I'll do that stuff all day long. Like, I feel very confident. I feel good. Like, I feel like that's my space. But yeah, I mean, and I wrestled in high school. My freshman year, I did terrible. I was terrified of it. Sophomore year, I did really, really good. And then junior year, I did good. I didn't wrestle my last year, but it was definitely, those were the sports that I played.
So wrestling was your introduction to kind of contact.
Yes.
What made you join wrestling?
At the time, how old are you?
I'm 43.
You're 43? That's crazy. Number one. I'm 43 also. So when you and I were in high school, the movie Vision Quest was like a freaking huge movie. Yes. And we used to watch that, and I was like, oh, I want to wrestle. Like, that was why I wanted to wrestle, because of that movie, Matthew Modine back in the day. For all you youngsters listening to this, go Google Vision Quest. Like, it was a good wrestling movie. I loved it. So that was like, I want to try that. And that's why I want to try it.
It's so funny, the things that kind of inspire us to do things, especially things like that, not necessarily Oscar worthy cinema, but it doesn't have to be, particularly as a kid. Right.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, that wasn't very God, I just saw this. I saw Highlander is available now for like $5 on iTunes. And I'm like, looking back, I'm like, that's not really the best movie. But I remember watching it as a kid. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just incredible. Even like the Bruce Lee kind of stuff is funny. But so you were inspired by the movie to get into wrestling.
Yeah.
That was your first foray into actually, oh my gosh, actually putting hands on somebody, aside from getting pushed down and punching somebody, not getting detention for it. When did you realize that that's what you were getting into, is like learning to be able to fend for yourself?
Not at the time. I just liked wearing the tights all the time. No, I'm kidding.
dude, we've had this conversation already.
Yeah. No, for me, like, I'll tell you another funny story of like how the mind will just, the mind thinks a certain way and then the body will follow. I will never forget to this day, my very first wrestling match, where I was, the color of the mat. And I knew, even when we started that meet, I knew I was going to lose. Like, I knew it. I was like, I am so not comfortable with this right now. And I remember going out on the mat and I was like, it's probably going to be the first round I'm going to lose. Yeah, I'll probably do that. And then I remember the whistle going off and I was like, well, I have to make it look like I'm really aggressive though, like before I lose. So like I went right for the takedown and totally just stumbled over myself trying to grab this guy's leg. And I don't even think it was probably 45 seconds that he had me on my back. And I was like, all right, cool. I got my first loss out of the way. And then after that, I became more comfortable with it. I just had to get out there and like all the yelling and all your coach and
it's the environment of it.
Yeah. It was almost like, I just need to be out here and I'm not really going to try. I'm just going to experience it. I'm going to make it look like I'm trying. Like that was, that's how it was my first match, but
full on kayfabe, man.
Yeah, definitely.
So because it's easy, right, to see that, because I mean, it's in its own specific environment, right? There's an agreement there, definitely with your training partners, your team, but also, when you actually go to the meets. But when did you make that connection between your ability and your, willingness to go one-on-one with somebody on the mat versus, this could work off the mat as well?
Yeah. So you want to hear a story? When I was my end of my sophomore year, where I was doing better, and especially my junior year, like I had lost weight. I had dropped weight class. I was a heavyweight my freshman year, and then I dropped down to 171.
And this is all from wrestling? All from
wrestling. I dropped down. No, not from that. My freshman year, I was always fat. Didn't matter how much exercise I did. I just ate terrible. Sophomore year, kind of started to lose some weight. And then junior year, I dropped from heavyweight to 171. And that was my weight that I wrestled. And I'll never forget, that was my first experience of turning bad experiences into fuel. And I'll explain. So the first meet that we had, I felt good. I was thinner. I was fitter. I had worked out. Like I was like, man, I still wasn't in great shape, but I was in the best shape I'd ever been my whole life. And I felt good. And I remember seeing the kid that I was going to wrestle, and he looked like somebody who probably would have bullied me. Like I always kind of had like this stereotypical like kid who bullied me. Like they were always young, lean. They were popular, they were athletic looking. And I remember looking at this kid and being like, every freaking kid that ever pushed me around, you look like him, and I'm going to kick your ass. Like that was my mentality. It was almost like all these years of being bullied. Like I saw all of them. And I remember like when I hit the mat, I was like, I'm going to kill this guy. Like
little did he know.
Yeah. Like it was like a complete switch had flipped from when I did my very first match freshman year to now. Cause I was like, this guy is not going to get out of the first round with me. I'm going to kill him. And I remember the whistle blowing and like him like trying to wrestle me down. And I just remember like the rage in me was insane. And I remember like just crushing this guy. And I was like, after I won, my hand was raised. I was like, holy crap. Like I can hang with these guys now. Like I can actually do my part. I can defend myself. And from then on out, I was just like, I was a madman then after that. And I felt good. I felt confident. And that definitely propelled me into, I became highly competitive in Taekwondo. I became highly competitive in Kuksul. I was actually I don't hang like any of my medals or anything like that, but I was going through in boxing medals. I have 57 gold medals from tournaments, from sparring. And like, I would just get mad competitive with that stuff. And, I mean, I guess that's why I still feel that itch to, even like go learn some more,
Well, let's talk about that a bit, because I mean, you use that what was pent up inside and kind of had a symbol of all of that pain and everything. And you're able to link that to your to the competition. So is it such that you feel like when you're talking about, okay, I got super competitive, right? I'm trying to make the jump from like all the pain that you had from bullying and seeing this guy as a representative of that to now carrying that into competition. Do you feel like you have a chip on your shoulder?
Yeah, so I can explain how even this started the Good Dad Project. So I didn't really start, I guess you could say like, I mean, I did martial arts when I was in college, but I didn't join Kuksul Wan until I was 30. Yeah. And it was weird because like I had a good arsenal, like a foundation of skills, because I did Taekwondo and I did wrestling. So I did Kuksul, and Kuksul is a mixed martial art, traditional of Taekwondo and Hapkido put together. So it's kind of like Chuck Norris, even though I know he didn't do Taekwondo, he did Jung Sudo, or I can't remember, but it's anyway, it's one of those. And then Steven Seagal, like that's, so someone grabs you, joint locks, pressure points, all that good stuff. But for me, so I felt really good and I felt really confident. And I got really carried away with it. Like I got obsessed with it to the point where that's where it threw me out of balance. Like where I was at class like every night of the week, and I wasn't spending time with my wife or my kids, or at the time we had one when I started, and then by 2008, which was 2 years later, we had my second, and then I quit at the very beginning of 2011. And I quit because like I became so into it, and I was competing like every weekend, just like I was like, it was almost like all those years of never being good at anything and people pushing you around. But for me, it wasn't so much at that age being pushed around. It was all those years of never being good at anything sports wise. And then all of a sudden you're winning every weekend. Like I became like obsessed with it. My wife was like, really? You're going to do another tournament? Like another tournament? You just did one 3 weeks in a row. And I was like, yeah, but this one's, and then finally it finally just got to the point where I was just like, I'm out of balance. I'm going, and now that we've been doing Dad Edge and Good Dad Project, I know right now what I was seeking at the time. That was validation. I wanted validation that I was good at something. I wanted validation that all those years of being pushed around, that I could actually do something. And that validation became addictive, just like over weekend after weekend, like, oh man, I'm finally good at something. I'm finally
especially
good at
if
something.
You're winning.
Yeah. Especially if you're winning. And then, I'd say it probably got a bit out of balance, and I stopped. I quit, and actually quit right before my black belt, which hurts me a bit. I still have my black brown belt with, you have to be tested 8 times over 2 years to get your black belt. And that was one test away. And, but my wife was just like, we don't see you, and kids are always wondering where you're at. And, and it was, so and unfortunately I was a part of a school that required, if you want to be a black belt, you were required to go no less than 3 times a week. And if you fell beyond that, then they wouldn't promote you. So, Yeah, basically. And I never trained on Fridays because there wasn't class. So it was basically you need to make 3 out of 4 nights, Monday through Thursday.
Mm.
So it was probably a long-winded answer, but yeah.
No, man, that's huge. I mean, like that's especially in retrospect, you think like, what are the things that drove my particular behavior?
Yeah.
This time, no. But do you feel like was there any anger associated with it, or was it just like I'm feeling good? I want to continue feeling good. Like I didn't feel good, counteract not feeling good for so many years as a young man.
Yeah, at that age, the anger was gone. It was more the validation. Like, wow, you're still good. You're still good. Like every weekend, you're still good. You get that stamp of approval. You're still good, and that became very addictive. Yeah, almost dangerous. Addictive. Now that I look back and reflect on it,
dangerous in that you didn't have the balance anymore.
I did not. Yeah, the winning, getting better. It became more important than spending time with the family. It's kind of like Rocky 5, right? I don't know if you've seen that, but like where he gets so obsessed with training Tommy Gunn because he gets that feeling again that he's winning again, that his whole life gets thrown out of balance.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about kind of your approach with your boys in terms of defending themselves and that type of thing. How else do you approach that subject with them in terms of, like, especially if they, I don't know if all of them have had the experience of getting bullied or having someone in their face, kind of like what you described earlier. But is that something that you try to preempt in some way, particularly with the younger ones, or you kind of just like take it as it comes?
No, I definitely have prepped them, and I'm proud to say that the two younger ones are too small. They're 4 and 2, but the 2 older ones, I'm proud to say they do not bully at all. In fact, I'm pleased to see that they're wired to come to somebody's rescue versus getting bullied. Now, I will say this: my oldest one, he, in a couple of situations, I would say he's been more of a target. He's a little smaller. He's sensitive,
emotional, right? Yeah.
Yeah. He's a bit empathetic, but I have no doubt that when I saw what he did that one day, that if push came to shove, he would be able to execute upon defending himself or somebody else if he needed to. And he's always, he never bullies anybody ever. Like he's good about that.
Well, it's interesting that when you say he's asking you for, to teach him a couple of things, but you'd rather just take a class with them.
I would, because, I don't know how to teach that. I feel like I am not the guy. Like, I feel like, I'm a good student, but as far as breaking down, like, okay, here's how you do these things. Like the best thing I do with him is I demonstrate. So I've taught him things. So I taught him how to punch correctly. I've taught him how to kick, and I always teach him the common sense stuff. I'm like, look, you're never going to win a fight by kicking somebody in the head. Okay. Unless they're on the ground. So like, if you need to defend yourself from the waist up, use your hands. If you're defending yourself from the waist down, use your feet.
Right.
Like, don't ever try to spin kick somebody to the head. Cause in the real, it looks pretty, but in the real world, it rarely works.
Yes.
And I have taught him, like, the majority of confrontations usually go to the ground, or they grab you in some way. One thing that Kuksul did teach me, which I loved, was Hapkido. So in order to go from white belt to black belt, you have to learn over what we call 300 techniques. And that sounds really frou-frou and traditional, but these techniques are brutal. Like, I loved them and I hated them. I loved doing them to somebody else, but I hated practicing with someone who had to do them, because they just, like, the joint locks and the pressure points and it's just painful stuff. Like, you could break some easily. We learned how to break arms. We learned how to dislocate shoulders. We learned how to break ribs. We learned all the pressure points in the face, on the arms, on the hands, everywhere. So like, what I do is I'm like, look, if someone grabs you like this, here's your 2 go-to moves. Here's how you make sure you use that person's body against them, or just get away from them, versus try to teach him 100 different things that he won't remember.
Was that an easier transition for you, going from wrestling to then Taekwondo, then to Kuk Soul, going through that as opposed to starting from nothing into wrestling? I mean, did you, like, your wrestling help you in any way to be okay with what you had to do in your martial arts training?
I would say it was probably a good foundation of, I've had Jake Herbert on the show, who was an Olympic wrestler for the U.S. Olympic team back in 2012 and then 2016. And what he used a term called physical literacy that really stuck with me, because wrestling does, or any type of grappling sport, teaches you tremendous amounts of what does my body do? How does it move? How does it move at this angle in this space? Like, what's my depth perception of like a punch or a kick or anything like that? Like, for me, wrestling gave me a lot of physical literacy, like what my body could do when it's trying to be maneuvered by somebody else. So it definitely helped me there. But as far as like striking and punching, it didn't do much good. But definitely the grappling part. Yeah.
But you knew your body much better.
Yeah.
And in terms of like even not only your own energy, but also, as you're saying, like the energy that somebody else gives you.
Yeah.
You can do that. Now that's not because, I mean, you didn't excel at it. You did baseball, you did basketball, but that's a very different dynamic than actually putting hands on somebody.
Right.
Yeah. Because
which I was thinking, those lessons I think are very valuable, of someone, because you could go your whole life and someone not put their hands on you trying to hurt you, and when they do, you're like, oh my God, what do I do? Like, you panic. So like, at least wrestling, it was a sport, but someone put your hands on, and I'm like, oh, I've been here before. I know what this feels like. Like even now, I mean, being 43 years old, like I wrestle with my kids, and I mean, like, and granted they're kids, but I'm like, I feel very comfortable in this space. Like, they're trying to move my body one way. Like, I know what I can do to, and luckily so do they, because we've learned, I've taught them that too.
Yeah. Is that something that you kind of, I would say, force on your is that important for you to impart on your kids? Like, do you say, like, okay, when it gets time for them, they get to high school or such, you have it in your head that, okay, they're going to be doing something like this. They're going to learn in some way to compete or to, like, learn about their body and through sports, etc. What are your thoughts around that?
Just any sport, or like,
or just in general? I mean, do you have something in your head about it?
Yeah, the thoughts in my head, I'll go twofold on this. Number one, we want our kids to be doing something. Okay. Because I think doing something keeps them out of trouble. It doesn't matter I don't care what sport they do. I don't care what activity they do, as long as they do something that's positive. Because I think when a kid's bored, that's when you're asking for trouble, because they could easily get into the wrong thing. So it doesn't matter if it's football. Like, my oldest played hockey last year. I can't even skate backwards to save my life. I'm like, hey, we do hockey. Let's go do hockey. He hated. I love wrestling. I coached my son's team for 3 years. My oldest, like, to him, it's like it was the worst experience of his life, wrestling, like, because he lost a lot. But for him, he was just like, that's awful. Like, I never want to wrestle again. Like, that sucks. Like, and that's fine. But he gets out on the ice rink and he loves it. So that's great. Now, I will say this. So, like, sports or anything positive, they have to pick something. And I don't care if it's scouting. I don't care if it's a chess club. As long as they're doing something that's either using their mind or their body or something in a positive way. Now, as far as defending themselves, I want them to know how to defend themselves. That is important to me. Because I think that's something that they would appreciate, given that if they're in a situation where they have to defend themselves. Something
you didn't have growing up.
Yeah. And I think that's part of why I want to impart that so badly. Like, hey, I didn't have this. I didn't know what the hell to do. I panicked a lot. I just let people beat on me. I don't, that's not my message to them.
Have you had conversations with them about what you went through as a kid?
Not as much as I have today. So you know more than they do.
Yeah. But I guess that's my question is is this something that you think is a valuable thing to share with them?
Yeah, now that you mention it, probably I think it would be, because perhaps it would do a couple things. Number one, it would probably demonstrate, like, man, I never want to be in that position, like Dad was in. I never want to feel helpless. And number two, I think that they would, if they did feel the temptation to bully, if they knew what it felt like being bullied, by my explanation, maybe they would second think, bullying someone if they ever were tempted. Or if they're in a group and their friends are bullying someone, maybe they're like, I know what this feels like. My dad has kind of described it to me.
I know that's something that I wouldn't even know how to broach it with my girls. I know they're getting to an age now where it's being a little bit more prevalent. It's more verbal than physical, but a lot of times it starts off that way. But it's a completely different type of connection and vulnerability to share with your kids. Kind of your vulnerabilities when you're their age.
Yeah. Because I look at somebody like my 10-year-old, who is super athletic. Athletics comes so easy to him. He's ripped. He's got like just this insane physique for a 10-year-old. And I'm like, I used to hate kids like you. Because you were the kid that would come and beat me up and tell me I sucked. But luckily my son doesn't do that. He always tries to help people, which is good. So yeah.
Dude. Larry, this is awesome, man. This is good stuff, really.
And by the way, my name growing up didn't help me not be bullied either, because only 70-year-old white men are usually named Larry, pretty much. So.
Hey, Larry.
Yeah. Because at the time of growing up, my name was either one of the Three Stooges or the pervert on Three's Company. So. There was never a cool guy named Larry ever. No. Until now.
I was to say until now, and that cool guy happens to be you, so which is a good thing. Good lesson to share with your boys. But this was awesome, man. I really appreciate you being open with all this stuff.
You bet.
A lot of people, man. Definitely people are going to be wanting to know more about you after this. So where can they get more of you?
Yeah, you can always find me at gooddadproject.com. That's my blog. That's my podcast. Podcast has been around for a little over 3.5 years now. We just crossed over 175 episodes on what I call the Big Show, which I don't know why I call it the Big Show. It's why I'm interviewing some sort of guest. And then I have another show called Thursday Throwdown that's also part of the podcast. It's called the Dad Edge Podcast. That's where I do something a little bit shorter, interview one of the guys from the Alliance, or just share some things that I'm learning just as a father myself in my own journey. So gooddadproject.com. Also, we have a huge thriving group on Facebook called the Dad Edge, the Dad's Edge, Real Dads with Real Purpose. We just crossed over 10,000 men there.
Wow.
And then we've got the Dad Edge Alliance, where we have over 250 members there, which that's our mastermind group, which you're a part of. But that's where you can always find me. And then, of course, you can find the Dad Edge podcast on Stitcher. And we just got added to iHeartRadio now, Spotify, and iTunes, and all that good stuff.
That's awesome. Larry, I appreciate you, man. Thanks for being on.
You bet, man.
Folks, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Larry. Like I said, he's a friend, but he never ceases to amaze me in terms of the rawness that he's willing to share in a public forum. When I was talking to him, particularly around the time when he was talking about being bullied, man, I was getting a bit choked up there, just because I knew what it was like to be bullied, and he was taking me right back there himself. But not many people that I know would be willing to share that part of their lives to benefit others. So my respect absolutely to Larry. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did, and we'll talk to you next time on the Everyday Fighter podcast.